He is celebrated as the founding father of Kenya, a national hero who led his country to independence. But the story of Jomo Kenyatta is far more complex and filled with layers that are often overlooked. Today, we're diving deep into the untold story of the man who shaped a nation, exploring the controversies, the personal struggles, and the political chess moves that defined his legacy. This isn't just a history lesson. It's the story of a man whose life was a whirlwind of change, power, and paradox. Born Kamawa in Genjai in the late 1890s, his early life was far from the presidential palace. He grew up in a small village, part of the Kikuyu community, one of Kenya's largest ethnic groups. His journey began not with a silver spoon, but with a deep connection to his cultural roots and an early exposure to the winds of change brought by European missionaries. He was among the first of his generation to receive a mission education, where he adopted the name Johnstone Kamau. This education opened his eyes to a world beyond his village, and it was here that the seeds of his political consciousness were sown. The Kenya of his youth was a British colony, a place where the local population was systematically displaced from their land and subjected to harsh colonial rule. Witnessing these injustices firsthand ignited a fire in the young Kamau. He moved to Nairobi, the bustling colonial capital, and worked as a clerk and water meter reader. But his real work was happening behind the scenes. He became involved with the Kikuyu Central Association, or KCA, one of the earliest African political organizations advocating for the rights of the Kikuyu people, particularly the return of their stolen lands. His natural charisma and sharp intellect quickly made him a prominent figure. The KCA saw his potential and, in a pivotal move, decided to send him to London in 1929 to plead their case directly to the British government. Imagine that journey, a young man from rural Kenya stepping into the heart of the British Empire, tasked with speaking truth to power. This was his first major test on the world stage. His time in Europe was transformative. It wasn't just a short trip. He ended up staying for nearly 15 years. He studied at various institutions, including the London School of Economics, where he was mentored by the renowned anthropologist Bronisław Malinowski. It was during this period that he wrote his famous book, Facing Mount Kenya, a powerful defense of Kikuyu culture and a sharp critique of colonialism. He also adopted the name Jomo Kenyatta, a name that combined Kikuyu cultural significance with a sense of modern identity. He traveled across Europe, even visiting the Soviet Union, absorbing political ideologies and building a network of influential Pan-Africanists and anti-colonial thinkers like George Padmore and Kwame Nkrumah. But while he was honing his political skills abroad, the situation back in Kenya was growing more volatile. The frustration and anger of the landless and disenfranchised were reaching a boiling point. When Kenyatta finally returned to Kenya in 1946, he was no longer just a local activist. He was a figure of international repute, seen by many as the leader who could unite the people against colonial rule. He became the president of the Kenya African Union, KAU, and his rallies drew massive crowds, all hungry for his message of Uhuru freedom. However, the path to freedom was not peaceful. In the early 1950s, a militant uprising known as the Momo Rebellion erupted. This was a brutal and complex conflict, primarily within the Kikuyu community, pitting guerrilla fighters against the colonial government and its African loyalists. The British colonial administration, terrified of the uprising, declared a state of emergency. They needed a scapegoat, a leader to blame for orchestrating the violence. Their eyes fell on Jomo Kenyatta, despite there being no concrete evidence linking him directly to the leadership or violent tactics of the Jomo Kenyatta, and 5 other prominent nationalist leaders were arrested in 1952. They faced a highly publicized and deeply flawed trial. The prosecution's main witness was later found to have been bribed. Nevertheless, Kenyatta was found guilty of managing and being a member of the Jomo, and was sentenced to 7 years of hard labor, followed by indefinite restriction. He was exiled to Kapenguria, one of the most remote and desolate parts of Kenya. For nearly a decade, the man who was the voice of Kenyan nationalism was silenced, locked away from his people. The British hoped that by removing him, the movement would crumble. They were wrong. In prison, Kenyatta's legend only grew. He became a martyr, a symbol of the struggle for freedom. The cry "Free Jomo Kenyatta" became a powerful rallying call for independence movements across the continent. The colonial government had inadvertently turned their prisoner into an icon. As the 1960s dawned, the tide of history was turning. The wind of change was blowing across Africa, and the British Empire was beginning to dismantle. The demand for Kenyatta's release became overwhelming, both within Kenya and internationally. Finally, in 1961, he was freed. His return was triumphant. He was greeted as a hero, the undisputed leader who would guide Kenya to its destiny. He skillfully navigated the complex negotiations with the British and managed to unite the various competing nationalist factions under one banner. On December 12, 1963, Kenya finally gained its independence, with Jomo Kenyatta as its first prime minister, and a year later, its first president. The dream of Uhuru had been realized. As president, Kenyatta faced the monumental task of building a nation from the ground up. He inherited a country deeply divided by colonial policies and scarred by the violence of the Jomo emergency. His early years were marked by a policy of reconciliation. His famous call of Harambee, a Swahili word meaning all pulled together, became the national motto. He urged Kenyans to forgive the past and work together to build a new, prosperous nation. He told white settlers, who feared retribution, to stay and contribute to the new Kenya. This pragmatic approach helped prevent the kind of mass exodus and economic collapse that plagued some other newly independent African nations. Under his leadership, Kenya enjoyed a period of relative stability and economic growth. The government invested in education, healthcare, and infrastructure. Nairobi transformed into a vibrant, cosmopolitan hub for East Africa. On the international stage, Kenyatta positioned Kenya as a pro-Western, capitalist state in the midst of the Cold War, attracting significant foreign investment. However, this is where the story gets more complicated. The untold part of Kenyatta's legacy is fraught with controversy. His government, while promoting unity, became increasingly authoritarian. Opposition parties were suppressed, and Kenya effectively became a one-party state. Critics and political opponents were often silenced, some disappearing under mysterious circumstances. The assassination of charismatic politician Tom Mboya in 1969, and the later killing of populist MP J.M. Kariuki in 1975, cast a dark shadow over his rule, with many pointing fingers at powerful figures within the government. Furthermore, the issue that first propelled him into politics, land, became a source of major contention during his presidency. The land redistribution programs that were supposed to return land to the landless were widely criticized for favoring those with political connections, particularly from Kenyatta's own Kikuyu ethnic group. A new elite class emerged, accumulating vast wealth and land, while many who had fought for independence were left with nothing. This created deep-seated resentment and laid the groundwork for future ethnic tensions and inequality that continue to affect Kenya today. Kenyatta himself, along with his family and close associates, amassed enormous wealth, including huge tracts of land across the country. The man who had once fought against the injustices of land alienation under the British was now presiding over a system that many saw as perpetuating a new form of inequality. This paradox is at the heart of his complex legacy. Was he a pragmatic leader doing what was necessary to maintain stability and economic growth? Or did he betray the very ideals he once fought for? Jomo Kenyatta died in office in 1978, having ruled Kenya for 15 years. He left behind a nation that was more stable and prosperous than many of its neighbors, but also one with deep political and economic inequalities. His legacy is a study in contrasts: the anti-colonial freedom fighter who became an authoritarian ruler, the champion of the landless who presided over a system that enriched a new elite, the unifier who was accused of favoring his own ethnic group. To understand Jomo Kenyatta is to understand the complexities of post-colonial Africa. His story is not a simple tale of good versus evil, but a deeply human one, filled with ambition, compromise, and contradiction. He was a product of his time, a brilliant political operator who guided his nation through the turbulent waters of independence, but also left behind a legacy that continues to be debated and dissected to this day. His life serves as a powerful reminder that the path of a nation and the story of its leaders is never as simple as it seems. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. What are your thoughts on his legacy? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more untold stories from history. See you next time.